What's up, Vikings faithful? I'm about to drop 5 pieces of news on you that are going to completely change how you look at this team, this season, and the decisions being made behind closed doors in Minneapolis right now. We're talking about fantasy football experts telling people to bench our starting tight end, trade proposals that could bring back Kirk Cousins in the most shocking reunion you never saw coming, a defensive matchup this Sunday that could either expose us as pretenders or prove we're better than the stats suggest, a trade from August that's already haunting us in ways that should terrify every Vikings fan, and a quarterback signing that shows this organization might be more desperate than they want to admit. But here's what's really eating at me, Purple Nation. All of these stories are connected. They're all symptoms of the same problem, and that problem is bigger than any single player or any single decision. We're talking about an organization that's trying to compete for a championship while making moves that suggest they don't actually know what they're doing. The fantasy football world is brutal when it comes to evaluating talent, and when they start telling people to drop Vikings players, that's not a fantasy problem. That's a Minnesota Vikings problem. When serious NFL analysts are proposing trades for quarterbacks we just got rid of, that's not media speculation. That's recognition that we might have made a mistake. And when defensive coordinators around the league are watching film and realizing they can attack us in ways that worked perfectly just 2 weeks ago, that's not bad luck. That's poor roster construction coming back to bite us when we can least afford it. So before I break down these 5 massive upgrades that every Vikings fan needs to understand, I need you to do 2 things for me right now. First, smash that like button if you're ready for some uncomfortable truths about where this team really stands. Second, drop a comment and tell me, when everything starts falling apart at once, do you still trust this front office to make the right moves? Or are you starting to panic about what this season could become? Because what I'm about to tell you is going to test everything. You thought you knew about our offensive weapons, our defensive construction, and our front office strategy. The first revelation is about one of our highest paid players completely disappearing when we need him most. Vikings Nation, let's talk about the elephant in the room that nobody in the organization wants to acknowledge. One of our most expensive offensive weapons has completely vanished, and it's telling us something disturbing about this entire system. I'm talking about TJ Hockenson, and the fact that fantasy football experts are now telling people to bench or even DROP him is the canary in the coal mine for much bigger problems with this offense. Here are the numbers that should make every Vikings fan sick to their stomach. Week 1, 3 receptions for 15 yards. Week 2, 1 reception for 12 yards. We're talking about a tight end who signed a 4-year, $63.5 million contract extension, and he's putting up numbers that would embarrass a practice squad player trying to make the roster. But here's what makes this situation even more infuriating. The fantasy experts aren't just saying to bench Hockenson for this week. They're recommending guys like Harold Fannin Jr. from the Browns, Hunter Henry from the Patriots, and Brenton Strange from the Jaguars as better weekly options. When your starting tight end is being ranked below waiver wire pickups, that's not a slump, that's a systemic failure. Billy Hine from the Sporting News put it perfectly when he said Hockenson depends more on big plays than some tight ends. So maybe they're just waiting to show up soon. But here's the problem with that analysis. Big plays require a quarterback who can find you, and right now, neither J.J. McCarthy nor Carson Wentz seems capable of getting him the ball consistently. The timing couldn't be worse either. We're in week 3. Fantasy owners drafted Hockenson as their starting tight end, and now they're scrambling to find replacements because he's become completely unreliable. But this isn't just about fantasy football. This is about a $63.5 million investment that's producing less than replacement level performance. Here's what really gets me fired up about this situation. Hockenson isn't some unproven commodity. This is a former Pro Bowl player who caught 95 passes for 960 yards just 2 seasons ago. He knows how to get open, he knows how to make contested catches, and he knows Kevin O'Connell's system better than any tight end on the roster. So why is he invisible? The quarterback change from McCarthy to Carson Wentz might help, but it also might not. Wentz is a new variable who needs time to develop chemistry, and meanwhile, Hockenson's fantasy value is crashing along with his actual production. When experts are telling people to pick up Dalton Schultz from the Texans or Cade Otton from the Bucks instead of trusting our starting tight end, that's a red flag about our entire offensive philosophy. But here's the part that should terrify every Vikings fan. If Hockenson can't get involved in this offense, what does that say about our ability to use our weapons effectively? Justin Jefferson and Jordan Addison can't carry the entire passing game by themselves. And if teams know they can ignore our tight end completely, it makes everyone else's job harder. The fantasy football analysis is actually revealing something that the coaching staff might not want to admit. When they're saying Hockenson might need to be dropped after just 2 games, they're essentially telling us that this offense isn't maximizing one of its most important pieces. What do you think about Hockenson's disappearing act? Are you dropping him in fantasy football? Or do you think Carson Wentz is going to unlock his potential? Comment now and tell me your strategy. Because if you think the Hockenson situation is concerning, wait until you hear about the trade proposal that could solve our quarterback problems in the most shocking way possible. Purple Faithful, I need to talk to you about something that sounds absolutely insane at first, but the more I think about it, the more it might be the smartest move this organization could make before it's too late. We're talking about Kirk Cousins, and there's a legitimate trade proposal floating around that could bring him back to Minneapolis. And folks, it might not be as crazy as it sounds. Here's the scenario that Ben Strauss from Clutch Points laid out, and it's fascinating from every angle. With J.J. McCarthy sidelined for 2 to 4 weeks and Carson Wentz stepping into the starting role, the Vikings might need to make a move before the trade deadline if things don't improve quickly. And Kirk Cousins is sitting on the bench in Atlanta, basically wasting away as Michael Penix Jr.'s backup. The proposed trade is surprisingly reasonable. Vikings send a 4th-round pick, a 5th-round pick in 2026 to Atlanta, and we get Kirk Cousins back. But here's the catch that makes this either brilliant or impossible. Cousins would have to restructure his contract because his current $27.5 million guaranteed salary would put us almost $12 million over the salary cap. But think about the logic here for a second. Cousins already knows Kevin O'Connell's system inside and out. He's got established chemistry with Justin Jefferson. He knows TJ Hockenson's roots better than any quarterback on our current roster. And Adam Thielen just got traded back here, so they've got history too. If we're talking about plug-and-play options, nobody makes more sense than Cousins. The timing factor is huge too. If J.J. McCarthy continues to struggle when he comes back from injury, if Carson Wentz can't establish the consistency we need, then suddenly bringing back Cousins becomes a move that could salvage our entire season. We're talking about a quarterback who threw for over 4,200 yards in his last full season and has proven he can perform in high-pressure situations. Here's what really intrigues me about this possibility. Strauss points out that the Vikings already proved they're willing to reunite with former players when they traded for Adam Thielen, so the precedent is there for bringing back guys who know the system and have established relationships with our core players. The financial aspect is complicated but not impossible. Cousins has no trade clause, which means he'd have to want to come back to Minnesota. And honestly, would you rather sit on the bench in Atlanta making millions, or have a chance to start for a Vikings team that's loaded with offensive weapons and trying to compete in the NFC? But here's the part that should make every Vikings fan think twice. Are we really at the point where bringing back Kirk Cousins is our best option? Because if we are, that says something pretty damning about how we've handled the quarterback position over the last 2 years. The proposal suggests that this move could work both short-term and long-term. Cousins can step in immediately while McCarthy continues to develop, giving us flexibility we don't currently have, and in a division where the Packers and Lions are looking dominant. Maybe we need that kind of veteran presence to have any shot at making the playoffs. The wild card is whether Cousins would actually want to do this. He's got that no-trade clause, he's making serious money, and he'd have to believe that coming back to Minnesota gives him a better chance to succeed than staying in Atlanta. But when you look at our offensive weapons compared to theirs, it's not hard to make that argument. I need to hear from you on this one. Would you trade for Kirk Cousins if it meant restructuring his deal? Or are you convinced that's a step backward for this franchise? Comment below and let me know where you stand. Because speaking of tough decisions, what I'm about to tell you about this Sunday's game could determine whether any of these quarterback moves even matter. Vikings faithful, I need to have a serious conversation about this Sunday's game against Cincinnati, because what the numbers show about their defense and what the reality actually is might be two completely different things. Everyone's looking at the Bengals defense and seeing impressive statistics, but I'm here to tell you those numbers might be the biggest lie in the NFL right now, and our offense could be walking into the perfect opportunity to expose the truth. Let me break down what's really happening in Cincinnati according to Joe Nelson from Sports Illustrated. The Bengals are allowing opposing quarterbacks a QBR of just 38, which is second best in the NFL through 2 weeks. They've got 4 interceptions. They're generating pressure despite having the lowest blitz rate in the league at just 4%. And Pro Football Focus has them ranked 7th in total defense. But here's the part that should make every Vikings fan sit up and take notice. Who exactly have they been playing? Joe Flacco and Trevor Lawrence. And folks, those are basically to early Christmas presents that make any defense look elite, when they're actually not. Lawrence and Flacco rank 22nd and 28th respectively in QBR among the 30 for quarterbacks who've played this season. In passer rating, Flacco is 30th and Lawrence is 28th. These are the quarterbacks who've been struggling so badly that they're making it questionable. Bengals defense looked like the 1985 Bears when the reality is much different. Here's where it gets really interesting for our chances. The deeper numbers tell a completely different story about Cincinnati's defense. They're allowing a 51.7% conversion rate on third downs, which is third worst in the entire league. Those 4 interceptions are covering up the fact that teams are moving the ball consistently between the 20-yard lines, and when you dig into how those interceptions happened, most of them were gifts. Lawrence threw hospital balls that got his receivers destroyed, deflections that bounced right into Cincinnati defenders' hands, and passes that were so bad they looked like intentional turnovers. That's not elite defense. That's elite luck against struggling quarterbacks. The pass rush situation is even more revealing. Trey Hendrickson has 14 pressure points through the games, but the next best pass rusher has just 6. Joseph Osai and B.J. Hill are contributing, but nobody else has more than 3 pressure points. That means if we can handle Hendrickson, Carson Wentz might have all day to find his receivers. But there's a massive caveat that could determine whether we exploit this opportunity or get embarrassed. Christian Darrisaw's status is still uncertain, and if he can't go, we're looking at Justin Skull or Walter Rouse trying to handle one of the better edge rushers in the AFC. That matchup could ruin our entire game plan before we even get started. Here's what makes this Sunday so crucial. This is the perfect test to see what kind of offense we really have. If Carson Wentz can avoid the stupid mistakes that plagued Flacco and Lawrence, if our reliable receivers like Justin Jefferson and Adam Thielen can secure the football, instead of letting deflections turn into interceptions, we have a legitimate chance to put up serious points. The beauty of this matchup is that it's going to tell us exactly who we are as a team. The Bengals haven't faced a quarterback with Wentz's experience, his arm talent, or his understanding of how to attack defenses that rely on 4-man pressure. This could be the game where our offense finally looks like what Kevin O'Connell envisioned. This Sunday is going to tell us everything we need to know. Are you confident our offense can expose Cincinnati's defense? Or are you worried we're walking into a trap? Let me know in the comments what you're expecting, because speaking of opportunities we should have taken advantage of, the decision I'm about to tell you about is already coming back to haunt us. Purple Nation, I need to talk to you about a decision that's looking worse every single week, and it's a perfect example of how trying to save money in the wrong places can completely destroy your entire defensive scheme. I'm talking about the Harrison Phillips trade, and the fact that we're only 3 weeks into the season and it's already haunting us in ways that should have been completely predictable to anyone who understands football. Let me take you back to August when the front office decided to trade away our starting nose tackle to save some cash. Harrison Phillips was supposed to be our anchor in the middle of the defensive line, the guy who could handle double teams and stop running backs between the tackles. Instead, we shipped him off to the Jets to save for $0.3 million this year and $7.5 million in 20-6. Tyler Furness from A to Z Sports nailed it when he said this move was not popular due to Phillips' ability to stop the run, and now we're seeing exactly why that unpopularity was justified, because our run defense has fallen apart without him. Here's the brutal reality of what's happened since Phillips left. Week 1 against Chicago looked okay because 58 of the 119 rushing yards we allowed came on scrambles by Caleb Williams. But then came week 2 against Atlanta, and it was a complete disaster. 218 rushing yards allowed. Bijan Robinson ran for 52 yards on the first 3 plays of the game. Our defensive line was getting pushed around like they were playing against grown men. For the first time, the problem isn't just the statistics. It's how those statistics were generated. Javon Hargrave and Jonathan Allen, the guys who are supposed to fill the void left by Phillips, are getting absolutely destroyed by double teams. Hargrave weighs 305 pounds and has never been effective against multiple blockers. He's completely out of position trying to play nose tackle when he's naturally a pass rushing 3 technique. Here's what makes this situation so frustrating. It was completely avoidable. Phillips wasn't just some random defensive lineman we could easily replace. This was a specialist who understood how to control gaps, how to eat up blockers, and how to make it impossible for running backs to find easy yards up the middle. He was the foundation that allowed our linebackers to flow to the ball and make tackles. The timing couldn't be worse either. We've got Blake Cashman dealing with injuries, our linebacker depth is questionable, and now we're asking those guys to make tackles behind the line of scrimmage because our defensive line can't control the point of attack. It's a domino effect that started with trying to save a few $1 million at nose tackle. But here's the part that should terrify every Vikings fan about what's coming next. We're about to face some serious running attacks. Cleveland Browns in 3 weeks with their power rushing scheme. Philadelphia Eagles after our bye week with Saquon Barkley. These are teams that are going to watch the Atlanta film and run the exact same plays that worked so perfectly against our undersized defensive line. Furness pointed out that the 2024 Vikings finished second in the NFL in run defense, and one of the main reasons was Phillips playing in the middle. Losing that has created a weakness that good offensive coordinators are already starting to exploit. And there's no easy fix available. Tacky Time Monty is on the practice squad, but he's completely unproven at this level and only has 3 elevations before he'd need to be signed to the active roster. We tried to get cute with the roster construction, thinking we could save money at one of the most important positions on defense, and instead we've created a massive vulnerability. Be honest with me here. How frustrated are you about the Harrison Phillips trade right now? Was this a massive mistake that's going to cost us games? Drop your opinion in the comments and tell me if you're as angry as I am. Because speaking of moves that might define our season, the signing I'm about to tell you about shows this organization is at least trying to solve some problems. Vikings Nation, let's wrap this up by talking about the move that came out of nowhere. But Mike, tell us more about where this organization really stands than any other decision they've made this season. I'm talking about the Desmond Ridder signing and the fact that we went from having depth questions at quarterback to suddenly having a guy who was unemployed just days ago sitting on our 53-man roster as insurance behind Carson Wentz. Here's what actually happened according to Zachary Paralees from CBS Sports. With J.J. McCarthy sidelined for Tutu for weeks with that ankle injury, Kevin O'Connell looked at the depth chart and realized we were one hit away from having to start Max Brosmer, a rookie who's never taken an NFL snap. That's when the front office made the call that surprised everyone around the league. Ridder was sitting at home after getting cut by the Bengals, probably thinking his 2025 season was over. The guy went from Atlanta's starter to Arizona's practice squad to Las Vegas's emergency option, to Cincinnati's camp casualty to suddenly being our third-string quarterback. And here's the crazy part. He might actually be exactly what we need right now. Let's talk about what Ridder brings that most people don't realize. This isn't just some random pickup off the street. We're talking about a former third-round draft pick who started 19 games in the NFL, threw 14 touchdowns against 12 interceptions, and has an 8-9 record as a starter. He also played 6 games for the Raiders last season, so he's got recent NFL experience. But here's what really intrigues me about this signing. The timing suggests that the coaching staff isn't completely confident in Carson Wentz's ability to stay healthy or perform consistently. You don't bring in a quarterback with starting experience unless you think there's a real chance you might need him to actually play meaningful snaps. The mobility factor could be huge too. Carson Wentz has been trying to be a pocket passer his entire career. But Ridder gives Kevin O'Connell a completely different dimension if he has to use him. Ridder can extend plays with his legs, he can run design quarterback runs, and he can make throws on the move that might open up our offensive system in ways we haven't seen all season. Here's where it gets really interesting from a strategic standpoint. Ridder spent time with the Bengals this offseason, so he knows their defensive schemes and personnel. If he ends up playing this Sunday, he'll have insider knowledge of exactly how Cincinnati likes to attack offenses. That kind of familiarity could be valuable in ways that most fans don't appreciate. The contract situation shows this is a low-risk, high-reward move. We're not talking about a massive financial commitment. If Ridder never plays a snap, fine. If he ends up being the guy who saves our season when injuries pile up, It looks like genius roster management by Kwesi Adolfo-Mensah. But let's be honest about what this signing really represents. It's preparation disguised as desperation. We're 3 weeks into the season, and we're already scrambling to find answers at the most important position on the field. That's not usually a sign that things are going according to plan. The question that keeps eating at me is whether this move shows that the front office is being proactive about potential problems, or if it shows that they're already panicking about the quarterback situation. Because there's a big difference between those two scenarios. What's your take on signing Desmond Ridder? Smart insurance policy or sign of desperation? Do you think he'll actually see the field this season, or is this just roster management? I want to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Here's what I need from you right now. If this breakdown changed how'd you see our team's situation, hit that like button. If you've got strong opinions about any of these moves, drop them in the comments.